Hello, everyone. I'm the okayest bassist, and this is my Cort Space 5. So, the unboxing was a couple weeks ago. I've actually had this bass now for a couple months between recording the unboxing and doing the review. So, I've had plenty of time with it to get a good impression and a good idea of what I think of it. So, we're going to do our typical breakdown of four things from a scale of 1 to 5. The first one being playability. Playability on the bass is a 5. I prefer multi-scale instruments, but it's completely comfortable. Scale length is nice. The pickups are a good thumb rest, so you can reach all the way through. It's as comfortable to play as anything else I've had, so 5. Next thing on it is parts. Now, on the parts side, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 for a couple reasons. I will say some of the great things about it. It does have the battery storage compartment on here that a lot of basses seem to come with, so you can carry an extra 9-volt battery with you in case you need it for like a smoke detector. But on the parts, couple of small gripes. I like how the tuning bridges, they have good grip, but being a parallel fret or standard scale instrument, there's not a lot of room to get your fingers around to tune it, whereas on a multi-scale instrument, they're stair-stepped, so you have a little more room to get around on 3 sides typically, as opposed to just 2. But these do have a comfortable amount of texture to the grip, so you're not having to crush turning against something smooth. So they are nice. They anchor at the back, similar to the Ibanez EHB ones, so there's not any wiggle to it, which I super appreciate. That's my only complaint about my Lignum Art Ines, is that it doesn't anchor at the back, so it does feel a little wobbly. This one has, I think I mentioned it in the unboxing, but it has the type of intonation adjusting saddles that I dislike. It does not have a mechanical method to adjust the saddle for intonation. So it does have the set screws for string height, but to move the saddle forward and back, if I didn't use tape wound strings, if I just had metal strings, especially something like flats, I wouldn't worry too much about getting like a screwdriver or something against it and giving it a small tap with a hammer. But in the fact that I'm using tape wounds, I worry that if I do that under the tension, it may tear the nylon and then the whole string coating side would unravel. So I end up having to detune the string, move the saddle slightly, retune the string to see if that sets the intonation. It's super simple, and it's been around forever to have a bolt attached that you can just turn a screw head and the threading of the bolt will move that. I much prefer that on here, but it doesn't have that, so that's a little of a dock. I don't mind the sound of these pickups. They sound fine. It does have a push-pull volume knob. When it's pulled up, this is just inherent to anything being on a long, thin set, but it is just a little bit wiggly when pulled out, and since I always play in passive mode, there is that. It's always there. Another thing on it, I don't know if it's the pickups, if it's the wiring system, or what. I know I can raise the pickups before anyone tells me that, but it has very much noticeable volume drop when in passive mode. With the EQ all set to noon, pushing in the knob to go into active mode, I would say there's about a 20 to 25% volume increase. So I don't know why that would happen, because if the EQ is set at noon, everything shouldn't be boosted or cut. Everything should just be level. So I don't understand why that active circuit has additional volume over the passive. It's not something I've seen in an instrument before, so it's a bit interesting to me. So that's part of the docking of a point. And then finally, I really like this string retainer. Obviously, being standard scale and parallel fretted, it can have one that goes straight across. I like this system because it's a very strong mounting with a single screw going through the top. The downside on it is, again, since I use the tape wounds, one, if you have a headless instrument, you're going to use tape wounds. You have to cut the string, you have to seal it. I use thin set or thin cyanoacrylate super glue to stop the string from unraveling. But I noticed that the slot for the B string, I had to take the nylon off because it was slightly too thick to go through the string retainer. So if you're wanting to put extra heavy gauge strings on this, you may have some work to do on the B string if it doesn't have a very lucky taper before that 0 fret, because it may not fit through. I'm giving it a 4 because all of these things add to a decent bit, but no one of them is like a deal breaker. The string retainer, if that was by itself, I might still give it a 5. The saddle pieces, I usually knock a point off just for those. And the volume drop could just be this particular one as opposed to all of them. So it's a very, very close 4. We're 5-0 and it's rounding up. I don't do half points because that's too much work to keep track of. But it is as close to a 3 as it could be, but still gets a 4. I'll put it that way. Practicality, it's a 5. I mean, it's a 5-string bass. Obviously, being a headless instrument, if I can get it to sit against me, has very little or no neck dive. I mean, it will dive eventually. I'm wearing very slick basketball shorts, so but I mean, if you get it at the right spot, it's going to fall forward more than anything. But headless instrument balances really nicely. The way the strap buttons are set up, it holds well. If you have it on a strap and you're standing, you're not fighting the neck at all. It's going to balance nicely. It's a 5-string. You have the full range that you would typically have with a bass being a 4-string, and you get that extra low for comfort and functionality. It's not to the point where it's crazy enough looking that if you go to play it at like a church or a venue that might be a little more upper class. I'm not saying you could take this to be at a jazz ensemble, but maybe you could. I've never been to one, so I wouldn't know, but it isn't too crazy looking that anybody, I think, is going to give you more than a second glance. They may notice that the headstock seems to be gone and have questions about it, but it's not an abstract enough shape that I think you're going to get any major questions on how practical it can be to show up to a gig with it. So 5 out of 5 there. Purchasability, it gets a 5. I wanted a green one, and at least in the US, I noticed that some retailers seem to only carry one color. I believe Musician's Friend only carries the gray. Sweetwater may only carry the gray or may carry both. I'm not 100% sure. I ended up getting this one used through Reverb because tax, shipping, and all, I think I got it for $600. I think these normally run in the $700 to $800 range, depending on if you catch it on a sale. So purchasability, 5 out of 5. You can get them. They now make a 4-string variant if you'd rather have that. I prefer a 5, so that's what I have. So all in all, that brings our score to 19 out of 20. Very good score. 95%. Almost perfect. Not quite, but it's close. So there you have it. There's the review. Stay in tune because I do have, as you might have seen before, the multiple bass audio tracks where you can try to kind of compare these A to B with the same licks being played, them all set up in neutral or typically in passive, straight through the wireless audio system I use into my Focusrite, so there's nothing coloring any of the signal. That should be out in so many weeks, I don't know. But it'll be there eventually. As always, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.